Dear friends of the liquid world, today I like to show you two bottles from a very interesting company I found in the last weeks because I was doing so much research on Genever and tasting so much different Genevers. I found bottles from a company, it's called By the Dutch. And there's many things I like on the way how they do it. I think there's many things other people can learn from them. I really like it. And they have two very interesting products. One is Genever, Old Genever, and one is called Batavia Arrack. So let me explain. First of all, I told you in the last videos I've been 3 times to Holland, and the great Miriam Hendricks from Rutte Genever explained me how amazing and how different Genever is done. A year ago, and that made me fall in love with Genever. So I now start to try them all, not all, but many of them. And it's really interesting. And a few days ago I put up a funny quote, which is a little bit like, the reason why the Brits made gin after they discovered Genever is because they were not able to make such a complex spirit. For sure it's a little joke because there's great gin outside. But when you dig into Genever making, like Miriam explains it, or these people from By the Dutch explained me, it's amazing how complicated compared to gin Genever making is. A few videos ago I talked about Genever as well, and I explained it a little bit like when you have good Genever, old Genever, there must be a content of malt wine. And malt wine is a mixture, is a kind of, to understand, a good old Genever is a mixture of gin and young whiskey. That was very simple to explain. Honestly, it's not 100% right. Today I try it a little bit more in detail with this example. Because also there's something which I love by this company. So first of all, I talked to the guys from By the Dutch. I think it's a quite young company. I forgot the year, I think it was 2015 they told me they started. So what they do is what most people do today. They don't distill, they don't produce, maybe yet, maybe they will, you never know. But they had the idea of promoting spirits with a Dutch heritage. So that's what on one side many people do, you know, they don't distill their own gin, but they want to make in gin, and you know, they let other people distill. But what you can hear, do me a favor, whoever produces alcohol, buy this bottle, because it's interesting how they do it. Because first of all, they are very transparent on it, because they say this one is distilled and bottled by Herman Jansen in Schiedam, Netherlands. Herman Jansen is an outstanding, very famous old school Genever producer, so they are very famous. But what I really like, they explain everything how they do it on the bottle. It's very detailed. And to be honest, I think that's the way to go. You don't have to put it in the bottle, but at least you have to be very transparent and you have to be very detailed on how you do it, because it shows your love and your understanding for the people, for the product. So I talked to the people and I was really impressed how detailed their knowledge of making it was, because normally people don't know. That's a shame, but often they sell it but they have no clue. So this Genever I like for a few things. First of all, I like the taste and the smell. But what I think here, I mean, the first product was to do a Genever, because what's typical for a company called By the Dutch, promoting spirits, used to be famous in Holland. For sure you have to do Genever. What the interesting thing here is, for me it was a little bit like Pisco. Pisco from Peru. You have many famous producers, but sometimes the problem is when you go to a shop, all the producers have 10-20 variations, because Pisco is done by 6 grapes. So each of the producers has a Pisco from each single grape, and then they have blends and some other things going on. So for a beginner it's very complex to understand all the variation of Pisco, especially when it comes from Peru. For me, as I started to dig in the history of Genever, it's the same with Genever. Many companies have all the variations, which is great when you understand them. So what they do, they decided to go for one style, and it's just their old Genever. And it's very interesting because old Genever means it's not about aging, how long the product is aged, it's about the content of malt wine in this product. And malt wine is the fancy thing which makes Genever to a Genever. Or now it will make it again, because I'm very happy Miriam from Rote told me, and there was a few other famous Genever distillers, that they will now have a new law coming out that Genever at least must have again a content of 1.5% of malt wine. Because today I think there's no minimum limit for malt wine, but a white spirit without malt wine, how can it be Genever? Because when you understand Genever, it is all about malt wine. So what I like on these guys, first of all, I like the packaging. The product is nice. It's a good balanced Genever. It's 38 ABV. You have definitely this power of malt wine. You get this idea of there's some whiskey hints in it. There's a fruitiness. There's fruits typically for Genever. There's a little bit sweetness. It's typically for Genever. I think it's a very well balanced product, and I think this one is a good product also for mixing drinks because it's strong enough, but also you can have it neat. So I think we only do one shot on Genever. Good decision in my opinion. What I like, they explain you the malt wine, how they do it, and I think each producer does a little bit different. So what they do is, so they take three types of grain, which is corn, rye, and malted barley. And they make a kind of mash from that, so adding water, adding some yeast, so you produce a little bit winey alcohol of that. And then they do a very, very low distillation, only on 13 ABV, and this is called the runaway. They distill it again, and then they distill it to 38 ABV. This is called the, how they call it? Oikelmat. I've never heard that, so something new to learn for my Genever research. The third distillation made this because till yet you have the 3 grains. It's like whiskey is made. The only exception is they don't distill it that high. They do a third distillation, but to this third distillation they add lots of juniper. So you have young whiskey, low ABV. You distill lots. You put lots of juniper to it. You do a third distillation, and then you end up in a product which has 48 ABV, and this is what they call malt wine. As far as I know, most distillers go up to 55 ABV, so they only do 48 ABV with lots of juniper. This is their malt wine. Now it becomes interesting. So this is not Genever yet. This is malt wine. So now you take the malt wine and you divide it. So you take one part of the malt wine. So sorry for that. The first one, they redistill with botanicals. That's a little bit like gin. Putting botanicals to a redistillation. Then they do a redistillation, another part, without botanicals. So they just higher the ABV. So they have a malt wine, make it stronger. So then they do a redistillation with lots of juniper berry. So there's a third part of the malt wine where they put lots of juniper berries inside and made another distillation. And then they blend it all together, and then they add neutral alcohol, grain spirit, and then we have this Genever. For me it sounds very complex, at least compared to gin. I think there's 2 steps which are very different. You have lots of more distillation steps, and also the products where the alcohol is made from, because most of the gin use molasse, neutral grain alcohol, or very cheap vodka. So here you have lots of grain. I think it's a very cost-intensive production compared to using molasses spirit. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm not a distiller, but as far as I know. The fun thing is Genever is not expensive compared to fancy gins and to all the other things. So this is how they do it, and finally you end up by the Dutch. Smooth and malty, and it 100% is. I really like the product, but even better, you know, there is a very interesting product from Indonesia. It don't have to be from Indonesia, but this one, and it's kind of famous in the bartender's world, but it's also kind of lost. This one is called Batavia Arrack. So what I learned from the people by the Dutch, I didn't know that then when there is the surname Batavia, the base is sugarcane. So this is a rum from Indonesia, but where they add 8%, so to the sugarcane they add 8% of rice. So they get also starch, is it starch? From the rice. So you have these mash, and then again they write on the whole story how they do it. So you have these sugarcane molasses, you add the 8% of rice, and the fermentation, you get the mash, and then you do a first distillation on 30 ABV in a very old school traditional pot still. You do a second distillation on 60 to 65 ABV. Then the Batavia Arrack is shipped to Amsterdam, and it's put in big old oak cask in Amsterdam, and this is where they let it rest and blend it and bring it to this 48 ABV. So here again, by the Dutch is not producing this juice, but they picked up a great history of Dutch tradition. And if you ask me, I love the Genever. I love the way how they explain it, how they do it, how they make the bottle. That's an interesting product for the bar. This is maybe even more interesting. The taste. It's interesting. You have a typical rum note, but there is something on you cannot immediately describe, which must be the rice content. Some kind of spiciness, and it's dry, it's fruity on one side. You have a hint of not really sweetness, not like this 23 something sugar edited rums. It's dry. There's a nice dry fruit taste, a little caramel, a little vanilla, but not really sweet. And I think this is really interesting. I think this is good. So they write down a price for me. I think it's for bars only, it's without VAT, which says around 30 euro a bottle. I like it. We have to play around with that. I just want to show you those bottles because I think they sent them to my office. I really like them. I like the company, the people behind it, because they were, as I told you, very, how you call it, eloquent on the telephone. They knew all the details, which I like. I think this is how they push it out, very transparent, to say, listen, an old Dutch tradition, we are traders, we buy good stuff, we tell people how to make it. We find the best producers that do it for us. For the Genever, maybe it's tricky because, I mean, you still can go to Herman Jansen, which is an amazing producer, and buy directly with him. For sure, this will be a different product just made for these guys. I think it's also good for Herman Jansen to, you know, get some other people promoting his brand. More interesting for me is the Batavia Arrack. But honestly, I like both. I like the way how this company is entering the market. I hope they will keep it this way. And this is two bottles you definitely should check out. Or if you want to try some, I don't know, come by Le Lion. I put it... okay, I put it down to the bar. I give the head bartender a note. If we have a little left, you can have a snifty and try a little. So the code word should be by the Dutch. So I keep these two bottles downstairs, and if you ask for, they can give you a little sip, and you can just try it and make your own opinion. This one is on me. Okay, and definitely I will come back with mixed drinks. I mean, for Genever especially, but we do lots of different brands from Genever. This one is interesting as well. Really, really well done. Most of it, I like the transparency. And this, for me as a bartender, something definitely we should mix very soon. And I will let you know.